Sannah Vinding is the founder and host of the Leadership in Manufacturing podcast. Sannah, an engineer originally from Denmark, has seamlessly blended her background in mechanical engineering with a passion for creative marketing, which she now channels as a digital marketing director for a semiconductor company. In this episode, Sannah takes us through her transition from engineering to marketing, the inception of her podcast during the pandemic, the valuable lessons she's learned from interviewing industry leaders. We'll dive into the challenges and triumphs of podcasting, explore how she's built a top-ranking show with over 150,000 downloads, and uncover the secrets to maintaining consistency and quality. Plus, Sannah offers some profound insights on her personal and professional growth, making this episode a must-listen for anyone looking to expand their horizons. Stay tuned for an engaging conversation that promises to inspire and educate. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. And now here's my conversation with Sannah Vinding. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulas, and this week my guest is the founder and host of the Leadership in Manufacturing podcast, Sannah Vinding. Welcome, Sannah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be on the other side. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time. We really appreciate it. Okay, so as I mentioned, you've got the podcast here, and
Yeah,
you've got quite an interesting background. Can you just give us like your backstory and how you
of
got here?
course. Yeah, of course. So original from Denmark, just to get that out of the way. So that's my accent. But I'm an engineer. That's my background. And I have like a master in mechanical engineering. So that's the whole world I've been in. And then I've been morphing into marketing as well over the last many years because I love to be creative. So that's that's where I am now. I'm like a digital marketing director for a semiconductor company. And then on the side, I have my podcast, which is the leadershipinmanufacturing.com. So it's fun to have a podcast. And I know you think, I'm sure it's fun as well as it's fun, right? Because you learn so much from these conversations. And how I started it, I wanted to expand my network, and it was under the pandemic. So that's why I was like, okay, sitting here, right? What do I do to still have my network going? So that's why it sparked. And I think we can all become better leaders. So that's why I was like, okay, let me reach out, let me interview industry leaders within distribution and manufacturing. And that's how we met as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was able to be on a guest on your show recently, and that episode's
Yeah.
already out, so appreciate that. Um, okay, so when I think of engineering and I think of marketing, they
Yeah.
don't typically go together within the same person, right?
No. Right.
So
Yeah.
how is that's interesting. I know you say you love to be creative, but how did you kind of morph into the marketing role after such a heavy focus on engineering?
On engineering. And I still use my engineering degree. I think that's how to, the critical thinking, right? Now where I am, right, looking at how do you de-engineer what an engineer is saying, right? And then put that into marketing. I think that's important as well. But how it happened, I worked in product development. And there I had to, of course, work together with cross-functional teams, and one of them was marketing. And then you had to explain, right? Sitting in that chair saying, okay, these are the features for this product. It was an outdoor light fixture, explaining how to put it together, what's the benefits, what's the features, all that. And then slowly through my career, I just got included, I think that's how to say it, included in many more meetings on the marketing side, and had my voice, at the table. And then it just slowly, happened that way. And I love to be creative. I paint, I make jewelry. So to have that creative side has always been there. So then I think it's also that's why it's fun with the podcast because I can learn so many skills just to be in front of a camera, right? I didn't like that in the beginning, and I think I'm doing better now, and I will be better in a week, right? So it's just that's just yeah. I think that's my journey.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So now you started the podcast in October 2020,
Yeah.
and like you said, during the pandemic. Now, why
Yeah.
the focus on leadership in manufacturing?
So it changed a little bit in the beginning, and I also changed names. So if you go back, I'm sure you can see Unlock Innovation, because that's what I started with. Then it was named Mind the Innovation because the unlockinnovation.com was already taken. So I was like, okay, what can I change it to? So then I said Mind the Innovation, and I thought it was an excellent name, but then I don't think I got the same traction by that because the interviews was around manufacturing. So then I was like, okay, let me just call it what it is. So that's why I changed it to leadership in manufacturing, because then it's like that's like everybody understands. Okay, that's what she talks about. So that's a little bit of the journey. But I think the industry that I'm in, it's um it's a little bit, I don't think it's a hidden industry, but sometimes you see more the final products that's out there, right? The computers or the solar panels or whatever we see out there where there is these components that goes in it. But everything that's behind the scenes, is happening. And it's just great to learn within this industry and share the knowledge. So sometimes I see it as well to have these interviews. I learned something, and when I launched the first episode, I was like, if I can just teach somebody else just one thing, then I accomplished something. I learned something, and somebody else who listened learned something as well, and then that makes me happy. And now it's just, it's starting to grow a lot, which I love. I love to hear that people are saying, "Oh, this is great," and we love to hear what's going on and seeing. So yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So you have you always like had that thirst for learning, particularly from other people and within the industry and just, you know what I mean? Because like you said, every guest that you interview, you can learn something
Yeah.
from. Has that always been something you've sought out from other people?
I think if you ask me when I went, was completed my master in mechanical engineering, I was like, I'm done learning, right? I'm like, no more books, no more, right? Um, I would have said I will not sit and go through another test or do something because I was tired of that. So it changed. I think it changed with your experience. It changed with the different roles and responsibility I have through my career. And I also think what the whole technology, what's happening in the world, right? Of how we communicate, how we um, follow up on projects, right? It's everything has changed. So if you don't keep up on that part, you turn into a dinosaur, right? You're just left behind. So I think the fun and the creative side of learning has like bloomed again over the last many years. And then I'm sure same with you, right? When you then accomplish something and you finish it and you see it, you get so proud. And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't know maybe to do this like 3 years ago. I had no clue how to put a podcast together. And now I know different things. And when I started, I did a few things. And then, you slowly expand and grow and saying, okay, now I need a website. Now I need, to have some social post around it. Now I need to make short videos and stuff like that. And then you learn the skill set along. So I think it's just fun now to learn it. And there's so many resources as well, right? When I was in school, there was no YouTube. I'm that old, but so I think it's the tools and resources you have available now to learn. I'm so jealous at my kids of like, oh my God, right? If I didn't understand that teacher back then, and you just sat there and you had to find out within talk to your friends or find somebody who could teach you or help you to understand it. Now you just have all these resources available. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's such a great point too, because you hear that so often with people where once they maybe get out of school and they get into a career like that, they stop learning, they're not going to read any more books, and so
Yeah,
many times people get stagnant, right?
yeah,
So you took the opposite approach where you viewed learning as fun and you're looking for new creative ways that you can gain more
yeah,
knowledge and then use that to help start a business and just grow that as well as continue to, build your skill set.
yeah.
Okay, so another stat that I've seen and I've heard quite a bit since I started the podcast, it's like 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 7.
I heard that too.
And so the current name, when I looked on Listen Notes, and your
Yeah,
top 5% on Listen Notes, which is it's a big deal. You've got over 96 episodes in this current name, but
yeah.
so how did you, like you said, you just decided to do it and you started. How did you keep going when the vast majority of other people quit so early?
Good question. And sometimes I am really tired on a Sunday night because this is my, it's my side project, right? I do in evenings and weekends. So, um, I think it's the that you yeah, it's the happiness after when you see it, right? You go through it and you say, okay, I did it, and you get some really good conversations. And then it's also the feedback you hear when you then have your network, or you go out to a conference, or you talk with colleagues, somebody, they said, oh, I heard that, or I listened to that, I really like that. um, that just that gives me that boost of saying, "Oh my God, there's somebody listening, right? They really like it." So I keep going because sometimes it can be a little bit lonely, right? Just to stand here with your microphone, and even if you interview one, right, you're like, "Okay, is there anybody out there, right?" Um, but it has been a roller coaster. I want to admit that sometimes it's like, oh my God, I have to do this again. But it's also important with the podcast that you have that heartbeat that you keep going, because again, I have it every second Tuesday. I have a new episode that's coming out. And if it's not there, right? Somebody was like, hey, what happened here, right? I'm actually listening either, maybe that Tuesday morning or Wednesday, and like, what's going on with Sannah, right? Why is it not here? And that's how I react to some of the podcasts that I'm listening to. I'm like, I have one, I'm like, he hasn't put anything out since May. I'm like, what's going on, right? Is he all right? So it's to make sure you have the cadence, and still have fun. Because of course now at the episode at 96, right? If I'm not having fun, I wouldn't have been at 96. And now I'm so excited that I'm going to episode 100, and I'm like already exploring like, oh, what should that be about? And who should it be? Should it only be me? What's going on? So I'm starting to be creative about that. But it's yeah, it's some people think it's easy just to start a podcast. It is easy to start, but to make sure that you actually are standing behind it and have that cadence and keep providing value, that's a whole other level, and you're on the same boat, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in the very beginning, very few people were listening, and I was telling a bunch of people I was doing it before I started, and they were like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
good luck. And I just focused on any positive feedback, even if it was a couple people or a guest I had that were like, wow, that was great. I really appreciate
Yeah.
the interview. I just
Yeah.
used that as my, that to continue to sustain me and keep me going, and before I could
Yeah.
actually build some momentum. And I mean, I think that's so important too, right? Because so many people give up. It's not easy. Sometimes your mind is gonna come at you like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah.
listening, right? But you have to keep working and build
Yeah.
momentum, and the more you do it, the better you get.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just what you said, you get better. um, I'm used to my voice now, right? In the beginning, I was like, oh no, I hate my voice, right? And then I was also like being in front of the camera. I'm like, oh, right, I had to do a lot of retakes. I still have to do a lot of retakes when I'm like saying, the little pitch for the next episode that's coming out. But I've become much better to be in front of the camera, and that is for sure because I've been standing here for a couple of years now doing it. So the whole practice is so important. And also you have to have sometimes like an 80-20 rule, right? So if you screw up sometimes, and I do because I can't pronounce every word because it is my second language. And then I'm like, I'm just saying the word again. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure somebody else has been in the same boat. They still understand me. And again, this is me, right? So they know how I am.
Attention manufacturers and e-commerce sellers. Is fulfillment a headache for you? Whether you're fulfilling in-house and you know you need to outsource, or you're with another 3PL and you know you deserve better service, Easy DC 3PL can help. We offer personal service, fast response time, and we're flexible to meet your unique needs. Get in touch today and find out how we can help you. Yeah, right. And you find too that when you do it, like that fear, that anxiety, right? It's in your mind when you do it and you realize, oh, that wasn't that bad. And the more you
Yeah,
do it, like that fear is just going to go away.
yeah, agree.
So now, how did you was it all just kind of figuring out on your own, the editing, all the different aspects of the podcast? I think we were talking about your website where you built it and you do all the
Yeah.
the back end work yourself. I mean, how'd you get into all that?
So I've done websites earlier on, so that's why that was not difficult for me to do and just saying, okay, let me just build the website. Um, yeah, I edit everything. I use Final Cut Pro. I've used different tools, and then I'm always hitting that wall of like, oh, I want to do some extra something, and then I'm like, oh, I can't do it in this software that makes it easy and fast sometimes to make a video. So then I'm just back to the real editing program where I edit it. But I think by editing it myself, I know it takes time, but I re-listen to the whole episode one more time where I'm actually reflecting and I'm like, okay, that one is really good nugget. I actually want to make that an extra clip and I want to put that out or I want to promote that on the website. um, it gives me some extra learnings on and reflecting because I think sometimes as well with leadership or just your life, right? Slowing down and reflect can actually make you a much better person or better leader. So by doing some of this myself has actually helped me as well to bring much more value to the community to the audience who's listening to the podcast.
It's a very interesting point too, because I don't do my editing, and
Oh, yeah.
I in the beginning too, right? When we didn't
Yeah.
know, like I was actually doing write-ups and I was going through the actual transcripts and I was
Yeah.
scanning. I would kind of reread the episode.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting point too, where if you re-listen to it one more time, something
Yeah.
else will hit you, or you'll maybe hear something a different way, and that can, spark more learning, right?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So for me, it's I see that as an extra learning. And also, right, I record and then it will be a couple of weeks before I listen to it. So as well, I to go back into that passion and vibe that is in that recording, right? It helps me as well, of course, to re-listen to it.
And how's the process been for you getting guests? Has that been like easy or has it been challenging, right? Like in terms of getting people to come on the show?
In the beginning where nobody, right? I pulled in best friends to get to get in, right? Like almost like family members as well. No. That's why you start and saying, please just come because I need to get past, as you said, episode 7, right? Different things. There's different websites as well where you can sign up and saying, hey, I'm looking for guests, within this topic. So there I got some connections. And otherwise, with my background, and I've been in this industry for many, many years, either now somebody recommends somebody and saying, hey, I have a recommendation for a guest, or I actually look as well and saying, oh, this person has a really awesome background. I will love to invite this person on. And then, I connect to this to the person and saying, hey, I would love to bring you on. And I think now that having many episodes and have the consistency as well, when somebody is looking, right now they're like, oh, right, it's not just a new something, right? There's actually some history to the podcast now. So I think it's also easier to see if somebody is interesting or not.
All right. And with the marketing too, like you've done very well. You've got over 150,000 downloads
Yeah.
right currently, and your top 5% on listen notes. Like from just someone starting from scratch, how did you go about marketing and getting it out there to become known?
So I think again, it's the organic. That's where I use my marketing hat, right? This is where I can use the whole skill set of digital marketing to say, okay, using the keywords, making sure that I have a great title, make sure that I push it out, I have the website. Um, that's like helping along. And then I upload everything to YouTube as well, because you have to look at if somebody is searching, um, many will actually search, on Google. And then if you have the video as well, that just goes in. So everything is organic, which I'm really proud of. So that's just another accomplishment that I've earned my way when you are looking up the podcast or you're listening. And I'm really proud of that.
Was there a certain inflection point where things started to take off, like at a certain point in time?
Yeah, I had a few when I go in and look and you can just see the spike, right? And I'm like, what happened here? And it's not that I'm sitting every day or every week and looking, but sometimes there is a spike. I also had an episode, and that was over the summer, right? Where I was like, okay, I also need a vacation. So I actually took an older episode from last year that was really popular. And then I was like, okay, let me introduce it again and saying this is really worth listening to. So if you haven't listened to it, right, you should listen to it. And that one took off. And I was like, wow, right? So it's I don't have the secrets to say this is the thing you need to do. I think it's back to the cadence and then making sure that you are bringing the value to the listeners and or the audience. And then sometimes it's just somebody else recommending, right, a podcast or saying or recommending this episode or something. That's where it can take off. So you never know. I don't know.
All right. And so with the all the people you've interviewed, you're 96 episodes right now with the leadership in
Yeah.
manufacturing. I mean, what are some of the most important lessons and things you've learned from all these great leaders that you've interviewed?
There's so many, right? Um, I think I always ask them in the end, I was like, what kind of advice would you give yourself like 10 years ago? And I think there's so many things there. I think one is like slow down sometimes. Even though, because I remember when I had the first episode ready, I was like, publish at that moment, right? Instead of waiting the 2 days and saying, okay, this is my cadence, right? So, but I was so proud of having the first episode. So I was like, it needs to see the world. Um, but I think slowing down and reflect and take some time before you speed up again. I think that's a really, really good advice. Another one from another episode is to say you can look at your network and you can admire other leaders, but you can also look at these leaders and saying, okay, these are doing this person, right, is leading in in good ways and maybe also they have some bad habits, right? Or even though maybe it's not habits, but there's something where you're saying, I don't want to do that. So reflect in other leaders, but embrace, what you want to say, I really want to do this, but also learn from what maybe is not as flattering and then go that way and saying I'm not doing that. So that's so many different learnings. I think as well if you look on LinkedIn, if you connect with somebody and they start, you connect and then they're like, oh, you want to buy my product? I'm like, no, right? It's like one of the advices was also that the sales process, right? You don't when you look at if you were dating somebody, right? You don't start kissing them on that first second after they said, yes, I want to go out with you. It's take it slow. There's so many things, even though we have so much technology around us. Take the time to know your audience or to know your customers before, bring the value first before you start saying, oh, now buy my product, right?
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, because we can all relate to the pitch slap.
Yeah,
That's what it's called, where you connect with someone and they're pitching you right away.
yeah,
Um, and I'm sure you can relate to having a podcast. I mean, I don't know how many emails from people that want to do my editing, they want to do
yeah,
my marketing.
yeah,
It's every day, right?
yeah. Yep. I agree. I get a lot of them where I'm like, yeah, no, thank you.
All right, so you're coming up on episode 100. Like what's next for the podcast? What do you have like future plans and what do you see yourself doing with it?
Great question. I think I want to bring some of the previous guests on where I will have, I don't know, the word is a panel, but I will love to bring on a more dialogues instead of just having it as an interview. It's more like three people or it's like four people. So that will be a challenge, right? Because how do you moderate and also being part of that conversation? So I would love to take that to the next level. For the 100 episode, I have invited a few guests back, and I have to edit that one. But it's more to ask them and saying, where I ask them and saying, how do you know that you are a good leader? Because we've been talking about a lot of, what does it take and skill set and all that, but to be more personal. So I made a theme, and now I've also learned that that's not going to be one episode because then it will be like 2 hours long, and I don't want to do that. So it will be when we hit 100 and then a few after them will be about that topic. So I think future is to go on some specific themes or something like that.
Okay. And speaking of that question, because I remember on our show when you asked me the question about how do I know
Yeah.
I'm a good leader? I mean, let me just ask you, how do you know that you're a good leader within your career?
So the answer is like, that's a good question. No, um, how do you know that? No, it's not easy. I don't think it's easy. And I think when we talk, right, it's about the feedback you're getting within your team and the organization, but also outside of the organization. Because if somebody was like looking and saying, oh, how would they describe Sannah, right? Is it good or bad, or is it positive, or what will they say? So I think it's to look at everything and then making sure you're looking inside yourself as well to say that tomorrow I have to change a little bit because if I want to be a good leader and I want to stay of being a good leader, right? You need to expand on your skill set and be better. And I think the whole feedback is so important that you listen to the feedback you're getting, the good and maybe not as good, and then just find out how you navigate through that, and then you can improve. And it takes time. Um, but I've been at places where somebody was saying, right, I had a team, and then somebody was like, oh, I want to be on Senna's team. So I was like, okay, that's a good sign, right? Um, but it's about listening and observing, and also, yeah, the silent feedback is also important because you have to make sure that you're seeing everything.
Yeah, so true. And that's something that never stops, right? You're always
Yeah.
working on becoming a better leader, no matter what position you're in.
Yes, yes.
All right. So, Sana, if people want to check out the podcast and get in touch with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Um, Go to leadershipinmanufacturing.com. That's the whole website, or they can find me because I don't think there's too many with my name. So look for LinkedIn and look for Sannah Vinding. I will lovely to connect with everybody. Just don't sell me anything, but yeah.
Yeah. No pitch slaps, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. All right. Well, Sana, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. We really appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.